September 1943, the 100th Heavy Bombardment Group has lost 12 B-17s and 3 more heavily damaged airframes, being scrapped over a 90-day period during the American and British combined bomber offensives into German-occupied Western Europe. The 8th Air Force's steady stream of replacement planes from the United States, meant to create additional bomb wings in England, instead is barely able to maintain the 2 air divisions' 1,500 operational bombers. Behind closed doors, the General Staff is alarmed by the ineffectiveness of their prized Norden bomb sights' results of accurately hitting only 10% of the intended targets. Combined with Germany's capacity to repair bomb damage in a matter of weeks or sometimes days at a cost of nearly 400 B-17 and B-24 heavy bombers lost in action. U.S. commanders have been shaken by these harsh and early lessons in this modernized industrial global conflict on a scale unlike anything seen before it. Yet, these Allied air offensives are taking their tolls inside of Germany. The British RAF night bombing campaigns have intensified into large-scale fire raids with 500 and 1,000-pound incendiaries capable of reducing entire cities into a burnt-out shell of a landscape. Additionally, Germany has been forced to mobilize tens of thousands of forced labor from internment camps to repair the widespread damage from daytime raids on industrial and military centers. These prisoners, now deemed as essential workers to the war effort, now gives them a slightly better chance at survival. Moreover, hundreds of artillery guns and fighters have been repositioned from Germany's eastern front away from the Soviet Red Army to counteract the ever-increasing numbers of American bombers streaming into England and North Africa. Going into 1944 and under pressure from Washington to see more results out of such minimal gains, 8th Air Force commanders devise a new strategy to prove daylight precision bombing can be effective. The plan is to overwhelm German air defenses with large-scale missions mounted every few days, causing the already shaking air crews to fly at an almost exhausting rate in an attempt to bomb the Luftwaffe into submission through an intensified and desperate battle of aerial attrition. Starting in October 1943, the 8th Army Air Force, along with the Royal Air Force, mount a massive effort of sustained and continuous round-the-clock bomber raids within occupied Western Europe. The heavily fortified U-boat bunkers in Brenham, Germany would be a repeat mission for the 100th Bomb Group, where 3 months prior suffered the loss of 3 flying fortresses on the initial mission. 350 B-17s split into 3 task forces of 6 air wings that would be sortied for this follow-on raid with 24 bombers from the 100th. En route to the target, the aerial armada encountered some of the heaviest concentrations of flak and anti-aircraft artillery from the recent fortifications transferred over from the Eastern Front. 150 Luftwaffe fighters flew straight through their own defensive fire to intercept the bomber formations in a fanatical fashion, with some even ramming B-17s head-on when their own fighters ran out of munitions. By this time, the German Air Force was under similar pressure from their far less forgiving superiors in order to find a way to prevent the Allied bombers from reaching their cities and designated target centers. The 100th once again suffered the highest casualties during the mission, with 7 B-17s lost and 4 more damaged. 30 bombers total failed to return from the 3 combined task forces. An additional 226 sustained damages, of which half of these aircraft were rendered non-mission capable. This equaled the highest attrition rate to date, reaching over 50% of the bombers being listed as casualties. From the 150 intercepting fighters, 19 were destroyed and another 30 damaged. When attacking unescorted bombers, the Luftwaffe scored an attrition ratio of nearly 4-1. This further emphasized the need for long-range fighter escorts like the P-38s that were already spread thin between multiple theaters of war and the P-51s that wouldn't be available for another 6 months. However, America's industrial capacity outpaced Germany by a factor of 10 or sometimes even by 20, making every Luftwaffe loss far more costly and difficult to replace. After the October 5th Brenham mission, the 100th was left with 14 mission-capable B-17s, raising the group's total aircraft lost in action to a number of 22. Continuing on the Big Week's offensive, 2 days later, the 8th Air Force mustered 307 bombers from the 1st and 3rd Air Divisions for a mass attack on the railroad facilities of Munster in northwestern Germany. The 100th's ground crews could only make ready 14 mission-capable aircraft, with 3 more transferred in from other RAF stations to form a 17-ship-strong sortie formation. Both task forces comprised that of 15 air groups from bases across southern England, with every bomb wing performing a large concentrated effort to deploy and make ready every available heavy bomber for the day's challenging mission that lay ahead. 4 groups of P-47 escort fighters provided air cover for the strike group's armada, but the faster Thunderbolts had to orbit around the slower bombers, causing the smaller fighters to expend precious fuel reserves. With reduced operational ranges to start with, the fighters, commonly referred to as little friends by the B-17 crews, were forced to turn back over the coast of Belgium as the pilots reluctantly returned home above the English Channel. Due in part to the high turnaround rate of just under 3 days and the substantial combat damage inflicted during the Bremen mission, repair and maintenance issues caused over 20 of the bombers to drop out of formation due to in-flight mechanical and aviation problems while circling back to their designated RAF airfield stations. 4 of these were from the Bloody 100th, reducing the formation down to 13 ships as they flew into the increasing pockets of black smoke dotting the horizon as the German defense network springs to life. The Wehrmacht's recent transfer of heavy artillery from the Eastern Front increased the effectiveness of this aerial shrapnel, causing 2 more B-17s from the 100th to go down, further reducing the formation that's now down to just 11. During transit, the air wing's constant speed adjustments from mechanical aviation issues combined with the heavy AAA fire caused gaps to form within the 3rd Air Division, splitting the task force into 2 smaller sub-elements. The 100th and 390th bomb groups are now dangerously exposed between these breaks in the positioning of the large defensive boxes. Over 200 Luftwaffe fighters analyzed and lined up their approach, looking down from the high position, utilizing altitude as an advantage to intersect the bombers' directed flight paths. Exploiting the 1st Task Force's vulnerable formations, almost all of the German pilots dove through their own anti-aircraft flak barrages straight at the bomb groups in correction maneuvers like moths attracted to a flame. 130 interceptors unleashed a storm of 20mm cannon volleys and fragmentation rockets into the bombers as the masses of aircraft became intertwined in a frantic gambit of aerial duels for survival. 2 more 100th B-17s are crippled from this wave of vengeful fighters as the bomber crews scramble to escape their shredded aircraft as parachutes and parts emerge out of the burning wreckage. Flying straight and level, the task force approaches the IP target area, placing the bombers in their most vulnerable positions as they prepare to release the powerful payloads after fighting through hours of deadly German-controlled airspace. Hundreds of bombs descend towards the Munster German railroad facility as the B-17s are finally free of the lumbering weight, jolting a surge of pure horsepower liberated from the 4 powerful engines that are now free of the heavy bombs. The pilots quickly direct this increased speed to mass ratio to escape the plague of swirling chaos circling around and trying to consume them. As the bombs saturate the target area, the widespread aerial artillery abruptly ceases as quickly as the turbulent flak menace had begun. This new loud silence indicates one thing: fighters, 70 modified interceptors and Me-110s have been methodically zeroing in for their own assault runs. Armed with a combined 140 heavy air-to-air mortars, each equipped with 210mm explosive warheads, displays the largest concentration of these heavy fighter Luftwaffe squadrons that were specifically designed to shred and destroy U.S. and British bombers. At near point-blank ranges, the skilled pilots carefully unload their arsenals, saturating the flying fortresses with deadly payloads of these air-to-air rockets. What only moments earlier were a group of 8 B-17s has now been reduced to a tumbling debris of shredded airplane parts falling across the saturated sky. 2 other bombers from the 390th suffer the same fate as most of the rocket mortars annihilate the 100th's group formation, with only one of their aircraft surviving the carnage as the battered task forces head back for their bases in England. 119 of the task force aircraft were effective at bombing the target, but the losses were significant. 29 failed to return, with 3 others ditching in the channel and crash landing on the English countryside. Additionally, 70 of the 307 heavy bombers sustained damages, and nearly half of those airframes would never fly again, adding to the toll of high attrition rates that would be referred to as Black Week by the 8th Air Force. All tallied, the defensive gunners on the Munster raid claimed 20 kills out of the 215 enemy fighters, with 49 others claimed as damaged. The combined heavy raids on Bremen and Munster, Germany from the 5th through the 8th of October comprised that of 657 bombers, of which 61 were lost in action and 296 damaged, with 65 of those scrapped for parts and salvage. This equaled a total attrition rate at an alarming 53%, with 18% of the total bombers lost and another 35% listed as non-mission capable, scheduled for extensive maintenance and repairs. The 100th sister air groups, the 390th and 95th, in the combined 13th Bomber Wing, absorbed the brunt of Luftwaffe attacks, losing 24 of the 31 total bombers destroyed from the entire air armada in the Munster bombing raid. Over the course of October's Black Week, 2 more large-scale missions were mounted deep inside Germany, raising the 8th Air Force's loss total to 148 bombers and a few hundred more damaged. By now, it was evident that long-range fighter escort was a requirement to sustain these heavy raids far inside of Luftwaffe-controlled airspace. For the remainder of the year in 1943, the 8th Air Force struck targets in France, the Netherlands, coastal areas, or wherever fighter escort could cover the bombers, suspending deep strikes and long-range operations due to the unsustainable rate of attrition and losses. Into America's third year of war, 1944 saw the arrival of the P-51 Mustangs, capable of operating deep into occupied territory alongside the heavy bomber formations. The 8th Air Force also received a new commander, Lt General James Doolittle. Leveraging these new advanced aircraft with updated fighter tactics, the 8th Air Force will undertake an aggressive offensive campaign to destroy the vaunted Luftwaffe and change the tide of the air war in preparations for the Allied invasions of France and the Normandy landings. If this was a boxing match, the German Air Force wasn't on its knees or laid out on the canvas just yet, but was getting heavily winded exchanging blows with the Allies and had limited water and bandages trying to rest in between rounds. The Luftwaffe's pilots were exhausted as the experienced aces were being gradually chipped away. Fuel was getting expended much faster than it could be replaced, and many of their aircraft were half broken in various states of repair and maintenance, causing them to be grounded far longer than their air adversaries. Following the first 4 months of combat operations in the European theater, the 100th Heavy Bombardment Group suffered 33 B-17s lost in action, 5 undergoing repairs, with 6 mission-capable heavy bombers ready for active operations, with an average attrition rate of 2.4 aircraft lost per week. 32 of the original 35 crews were KIA, missing or injured, leaving 20 of the 350 airmen that trained together in the mainland United States available for combat operations in late October of 1943. That equates to a 96% overall casualty rate, with one pilot completing the required 25 missions for a full combat tour of duty. This covers Part 4 and 5 of the Masters of the Air series that is currently streaming on Apple TV+. Implemented the operations to subscribe to the Surf Tectonics channel. Sharing the video link with social media circles and proximity groups is an effective way of letting the AI algorithm know you enjoyed this content. And if you are at this point, congratulations, you deserve a Pop-Tart or a Hot Pocket you hopefully can reward yourself with by getting up and walking to the kitchen. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Currently, I am patiently and eagerly awaiting the 5 hours director's cut of Dune Part 1.